Hello everybody, I'm Dan Hardy and welcome to my breakdown show. Today I am discussing the upcoming main event between Darren Till and Derek Brunson. Okay, so two middleweights, two guys that are really fighting for a top place in the top 15, in the top 10 of middleweight, trying to get close to a title shot. Darren, newer to the division, formerly a welterweight, moving up. Derek Brunson has been in the UFC a long time. He's had some good streaks. He's struggled against the top flight guys, but has recently moved to Sanford MMA a couple of years ago and has seemed to have a new lease of life on his career. So I'll touch on that a little bit later. But first of all, let's take a look at their records. You've got Derek Brunson, slightly more experienced in MMA, 22-7, compared to Darren Till, 18-3-1. Slight height advantage as well as a reach advantage for Derek Brunson, and both of these guys coming in southpaw, which is very interesting for me because Darren Till, he's a great southpaw. Most of the time, he's going to be coming up against orthodox fighters, so adapting his game for that, and also Derek Brunson brings a real wrestling pressure to the table, which I think is going to be fun for Darren Till to try and deal with. Okay, when we think about Derek Brunson, and this is maybe not the new version of Derek Brunson, the Sanford MMA version. This is the Derek Brunson previously when he'd moved over from Strikeforce and he went on this win streak. He knocked out, I think, 4 guys in a row. He has this chaotic sprint to his style, and we've seen it a lot less in recent fights. And when he has used it, it's been more measured. He's used it to help set up takedowns and stuff. But in his early fights, it was very, very chaotic. I mean, let's just take a look at this right now. Against Sam Alvey, I mean, this was just a sprint finish that lasted a good 20 seconds. He chased Sam Alvey across the octagon, and there is a real risk to this style, which we saw in the Robert Whittaker fight, because he tried this exact same thing and it was working until it wasn't working, and then he was on the losing end of a TKO. But while he's got somebody on the back foot, and because it's so chaotic and he's so ferocious with his attack, usually something gets through. And even someone with a good chin like Sam Alvey, he can't get his feet back underneath him. He's rocked. He's face down on the canvas here. Now, Lyoto Machida was a much cleaner punch, but the same thing applies. Look, the sprint finish all the way to the floor, fire in the left hand. Ed Herman, one other example, sprints him to the fence. And if you watch this finish, it's actually not the first shot that catches him clean. The first shot lands kind of on his shoulder, a really awkward shot. But then he follows up with the second one, which starts Ed reeling backwards. And then, as you can see here, I mean, this left hand here is like a heat-seeking missile. It's the only thing that is on Derek Brunson's mind right now. So it's very easy for him to focus on one target when he's thinking about one weapon to use, and then the flurry that comes, as well as his wrestling experience, which allows him to put his feet in a good place and his weight in a good place. And I would say this knockout over Uriah is probably the best example of his striking we've seen in the UFC so far as his ability to put his feet in the right place. Like the way that he cut the octagon down away from Uriah was really nice. We're going to see it in a second from a different angle. And what you'll notice is Derek makes a slight adjustment. As he's moving forward, he postures as if he's going to throw his left, and you're going to see Uriah kind of scoot out towards his right side. And then you see Uriah start to posture as if he's going to throw this right hook. He's planning on catching Derek Brunson around the side as he's moving towards him. But because Derek's very accurate and very direct with his left hand, as you can see, as Uriah starts to wind up for a right hook, the left hand goes straight inside and catches him clean on the chin. And the best thing about this for me was, like I said, the adjustment of the footwork. It was a double step for Derek Brunson, which moved him into range, step, and then readjusts to make sure he fires his left hand at the target and it lands. Now, that's a real threat to anybody in the middleweight division, that kind of sprint, that kind of chaos, because when Derek Brunson decides he's going to go, he knows that the best thing to do is to keep going. Pulling himself out of those circumstances is almost as difficult as continuing to the finish. So that chaotic style, although when it's applied, it's risky. What I would say is because recently he started working with a more technical striking coach in Henry Hooft, someone that's really starting to develop his technical game. There's always like a downloading time. There's like a buffering time where that information that's coming from the new coach starts to sink into the person's game. Now, the result that we have seen in his recent fights is much more of a focused MMA game. You know, he's used his wrestling more, and I think that that's what we're going to see in this fight. But that chaotic element is actually a value in this fight because he doesn't want to be on the outside playing Muay Thai with Darren Till, because the difference in their style is great. I mean, Derek Brunson's a dangerous individual. He's got power in his left hand. He'll fire his left kick over and over again as well. And, you know, it has worked for him, and it will potentially work again in the future. But in a striking match against someone like Darren Till, who has a good measure of range and uses his techniques in a more applied sense, you know, like I said, Derek Brunson's chaotic. Darren Till's very measured. He gives you the feeling that he's chaotic, but in actuality, he's not. In actuality, everything that he's doing is considered. Even when he's bounding forward aggressively, making his opponent reactive, as if, you know, the finishing technique's going to come. I mean, we saw it in full effect against Rob Whittaker here. Backed up against the fence, Whittaker's now firing and reacting, really when he doesn't want to. And what you'll notice is Till will bounce heavy on his lead leg. It's almost like he's trying to smoke out the attack of his opponent, because whenever someone's under pressure, they always have a certain handful of go-to techniques. You know, if you've been a lifelong wrestler and you're under pressure, you may level change, and that might be something that someone can set up and, you know, put you on a flying knee, like BJ Penn against Sean Shirk. If you're a striker, you'll have certain striking techniques that are comfortable for you. Mine's my left hook, my lead teep. You know, I have a few things that I know if I'm under pressure, I can use these things to alleviate. I can use these things to potentially back up or scare away my opponent and give me some breathing room. The way that Darren bounds onto his front foot, it gives his opponent the impression that he's coming in to attack. But because he's coming in at such a pace and such an intensity, it forces them to react out of panic. So what you see people's first hand on the table. You know, you see their first counter strike to be thrown. They show it straight away. And I'm going to show you this clip again, because what you'll see with Darren, as he's bounding forward against Whittaker, you'll see Whittaker swinging and reaching with his left hook. And this is what Till's reading all the way through. He bounds heavy on his lead foot. He gives the impression that he's coming to attack. And then he lets his opponent show their hand. They swing that left hook, and then he tests them again. They swing the left hook again. I mean, you can watch this first round and see how many times Darren forces Rob Whittaker to throw his left hook. There it was one more time. He's under pressure. Like Till bounces, look, and you can see Whittaker's reactive to it. He's tense, and he comes forward reaching. He goes right hand, left hook this time. And Till's doing the same thing. He bounds heavy on the lead leg. He tests Whittaker. And now watch how he does this. He edges into range, then he pulls him away and allows Whittaker to rush at him. I mean, it's such a well-measured attack that even Whittaker probably wasn't aware that he was being pulled in. He wasn't aware that that game was being played. Because what I'm watching here is the space between the two fighters, right? Like, Darren Till's the one that's playing with this. He's the one that's controlling that elastic band that attaches them around the waist. Because when Darren Till steps back, he knows Whittaker's going to fill that space. And if he gives Whittaker the impression that now's a good time to attack, he can coerce him onto a counter, which is what he does here. So just watch the clip back again one more time. Watch how he moves himself into range. He edges in. You can see Whittaker's heavy on his lead leg. He's ready. He's hanging with that left hand. He's waiting to throw this. He's edging Darren Till into range. And when Darren Till backs out, Whittaker feels like this space that he can crowd into. And Darren Till's there to meet him. And the timing of this elbow was just perfect. Because you can see from Darren Till's posture, at no point is he considering moving back here. But right from the get-go, you can see Whittaker winding up with this left hook. And Till's going to raise his right hand. He's going to bring that up to guard. And then he's going to fire that left elbow. You can see the right hand on the bicep to slow that hook down as it's coming and allow him to plant the left elbow on Whittaker's chin. And because Darren Till was in his spot, throwing that technique, he used that whole momentum of Whittaker running onto that elbow. It's a real value to Darren Till to be able to set people up like this, especially when they're not as experienced as him in the striking ranges. Like, Brunson's going to take a good while to get to the level that Darren Till's got in striking. But I would also say that Darren's got a good while to get to the level of wrestling that Brunson is. But he doesn't necessarily need all that wrestling. What Darren needs is the ability to stop what Brunson's trying to do. And what Brunson does is actually really very good. He's a strong wrestler that he's able to hustle and adapt. His takedown accuracy is not necessarily great. I think it's about 33%. But that's what you find with all of the good wrestlers. It's not the amount of times you take them down. It's the amount of times you attempt until they can't stop you anymore. They're the best kind of wrestlers. The best kind of wrestlers for someone that's got really good takedown defense, like Darren Till, who's at 82%. Because Brunson's going to shoot a shot, and Darren Till's probably going to defend it. But then if he shoots again and again and again, one of them might get through. But if he's discouraged on the first shot, then he's never going to find that out. And that pressure's never going to be applied to Darren Till, which means that he can then play a kickboxing match without having to worry about MMA. And that's exactly what Till would do if he had the opportunity in this fight. If we look at the way that Brunson sets up his level changes, it's one of the best parts of his game, because he kind of stands heavy on his back foot, a little bit like Stipe does. It's like he's waiting for his opponent to attack. Sometimes he'll back up, and sometimes he'll stand his ground as they rush forward, and then he's level changing underneath them. And once he's got a good grip on someone, even if he loses the initial attack, he's able to move around them and keep control of them and eventually break them down to the floor. The risk for Darren Till is rushing onto a level change, because Till does cover a lot of distance. He does bound heavy on that lead leg. Now, he has control of that bound, but at the same time, the weight's still being planted on that lead foot. And that is ideal for someone like Derek Brunson, who's got a good level change and has got long reach. This is where reach advantage comes into play in a grappling sense. Like, he reaches for the far side hip there. I mean, this is it's something that some people don't consider, but a reach advantage, longer arms, is a benefit to certain submissions. It's a benefit to reeling someone in, to pulling them in. I mean, there are detriments to it as well, but in this sense, when Derek Brunson's able to get a hold of someone and able to clamp onto them and pull them in, that those extra couple of inches of reach makes a big difference. And I mean, you can see how he's hooked deep here on Ian Heinish's leg. He's got a deep hook there, and he's wrapped around the hip as well. I mean, like, always looking for different points of control. Then he goes to the back. Then he starts to push him, and then he lifts and slams him to the floor. But he's immediately on the back. And this is something else that is a benefit to Brunson's wrestling style, because he hustles people so hard that they start to make mistakes when they're getting up. Like, look how exhausted Heinisch is here. He's struggling to get up, and the right side hook goes in. This is very consistent of Brunson. You'll see his foot come into play here. There it is. Now he's got control of that side of the body. And then he's starting to work to the back, working to chokes. Elias Theodorou, another good example. Brunson gets a good clamp on him here. He's able to get him to the floor by taking that leg away. And then he immediately works his way to mount, where he's able to put pressure on Elias Theodorou to the point where he turns his back. And credit to Elias, he does a good job of defending his neck here. But Brunson has now got him in this cycle where he's either on his back, trying to choke him out, or he's in top position, beating him up. Look, drags him down to the floor, and as soon as he feels like he's going to lose this, he'll scramble to top position. But he does have a submission on his record. I mean, this is early on. This is Brian Houston, way back in the day. Catches him with a high kick, and poor old Brian Houston does everything he can to defend this choke. I mean, he is trying everything he can. He's going for that top hand. He's trying to pull it on. He's trying to pull it off. He's trying to peel it off, and then Brunson switches. He goes palm to palm. And then he's able to flatten him out, and still Brian Houston's fighting. But the clamp that Brunson's got on him here, there's no way that you can defend that choke and breathe at the same time. I mean, it's an intense beginning to a fight. That was a 48-second rear naked choke finish. I'm not saying he should take Darren Till down and attack the neck straight away, but I think that being a component of the cycle that he could put Darren Till in is a real benefit, because of course, it's exhausting defending takedowns. And Darren Till's got good takedown defense, 82%. So he's going to be able to defend a lot of these takedowns. But the more he steps heavy on that lead leg and throws his left hand or throws his left elbow, and Brunson's level changes onto that lead leg, and now he's defending a takedown, the more exhausting that's going to be, the more frustrating it's going to get. So what we're going to see is the resilience and the conditioning of Brunson, and see if he can push Darren Till in that way. Because if he can get Darren Till to the floor, then he can put him in that cycle where he's mounted and he's ground and pounding, and then Darren's escaping and he's working to his feet and he takes his back. Darren's got good takedown defense. He's also very good at getting back up to his feet. But he does turn his back. Now, against Cowboy, there were two good examples of his takedown defense here. One where he is actually grounded. This first one he defends. Nice single leg here. That's what I'm talking about. Someone level changing onto that single leg, and look how strong that defense is. But this second time around, he steps in heavy with an elbow, and Cowboy's underneath him, and he's able to ground him. But you can see Darren turns, and he's back up to the fence. Now, one thing I will say is that although he is scrambling and he's giving his back, he is aware of the risks. And I say that because I can see what he's doing in this process of getting back to his feet. So, like, Robert Whittaker's on his back here. You can see Rob Whittaker's got a control on the neck here, but he's got no hooks in. There's no control of the lower body. This is the first thing that Brunson's going to look for. Once he's got the person on the floor, he'll be hitting them with his hands, and he'll look for that right side hook. He'll go for that almost immediately. Whittaker's got a different kind of control here, and as Till goes to stand up, of course, he's going to give the opportunity for those hooks to slide in. But he's aware of this, so he's guarded of it. Now, as this plays through, you'll see Darren postures up, and Whittaker knows this is the opportunity. We're watching this foot here. It's gonna come to fire straight in and take control of that side of Darren Till's body. But as Whittaker comes and brings it in here, you'll see Darren brings his elbow back to deny it. I mean, it's such a minor detail, but like, the left arm and the left elbow of Darren Till immediately come back to block that gap that is created by lifting his posture. It denies the hook, and it allows him to defend that and then rush back to his feet afterwards. So he's not giving his back in the process, and even when he's back to his feet, same thing again, scrapes himself off, and then he's back out to striking range. There is a risk, of course, but if it's a calculated risk, it's better than staying on your back. Of course he wants to defend the takedowns, but if he's not able to always defend the takedowns, when he's getting back to his feet, he's got to be guarded, and at least we know that awareness is there. He's watching for the hooks. Of course, Brunson's going to be trying to strike as well, which creates other opportunities for him to scramble. But the ideal case scenario, of course, is to not get taken down in the first place. And this is something that Darren Till's very good at, and something that he can make Brunson work very hard at. And the times that we've seen Brunson struggle with the striking range, he's tried to ground his opponent, and the more he's failed, the more he's panicked, the more he's looked like he's desperate for the takedown. The first one that comes to mind, of course, is Adesanya. Like, he was running and reaching for that takedown like he did not want to kickbox for any love nor money. If Darren can put him in that state of mind by defending some of his takedowns, it's going to make his life easier in the striking ranges as well. Because now Darren's discouraged Derek from level changing because he stuffed him a few times, and now he can start setting him up with knees and with lower level elbows, etc. But let's just go back to Darren Till's takedown defense for a moment, because it is very good. It's very educated. He's got Mike Grundy in his camp, who's an excellent wrestler, Commonwealth medalist. Tom Aspinall, who's a big, strong, great grappler, has a lifetime of grappling. So he's got two guys there, both big and small, that can work him and test him and also educate him, give him the techniques that he needs. This is a good example of a really deep level change that Darren Till's able to defend. I'm just going to step you through this. So as Darren Till sees Rob Whittaker level change here, he's standing his ground like he did in the first round. When he stood his ground, he expected Whittaker to throw that left hook, and he cracked him with the elbow. He's doing something very similar here, but the difference is Whittaker's actually level changing. So as Darren Till's elbow goes over the back of his head, Whittaker gets a really good bite on that lead leg, as you can see. Now Darren Till's starting to be driven back by the momentum of Whittaker, who now goes up and grabs a wrap over the top of the shoulder, the trapezius of Darren Till. We're looking at that. He's now hooked over the side of the neck of Darren Till. So as well as elevating the leg and having a really good control on that, he's lifting the leg, but he's also driving Darren Till's head to the floor. Of course, Darren's feeling this, and he knows that if he allows this pressure to be applied, that's going to break his base, and he's going to find himself on the canvas with Rob Whittaker in front of him. So the first thing that Till does, and you'll see this, with his left hand, he puts his left hand under the elbow of Whittaker. We're seeing that right there. Look, you can see he's got his left hand underneath. So he's pushing that up. So he's trying to alleviate some of the pressure. Of course, the momentum is on Whittaker's side. So this is what Darren's fighting against. but he's doing the right things. He's keeping space from Whittaker, even though he's got control of the leg. He's alleviating that pressure. And if we watch this, I'll just slow it down. Watch the base foot of Darren Till. Watch how it adjusts and adjusts all the way to the fence, so he's got something to lean on. Bounce, 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 and he's on the fence. And now he's into a different kind of defense, because he's gone from alleviating the pressure. He's built a frame on the side of Whittaker's head here with this arm, and he's pushing up on the elbow of Whittaker to try and alleviate some of the pressure of Whittaker, pulling down on his neck. And once he's able to get to the fence, immediately he goes to spread his base, and Whittaker reaches to control his knee here. And you're going to see Darren go from this control here, this shallow underhook that he's got, and he's going to go to the elbow, and he's going to strip that and lift it up and force Whittaker up to a clinch, which then makes Whittaker break. That was a very fast sequence. A lot happened in that sequence. But the reason I like it is because a lot happened in that sequence, because Darren had to adapt, because he stepped in expecting to land an elbow and Whittaker was on his leg, and immediately he built a frame and Whittaker was now driving down on his neck, so he had to adjust for that. He had to take some of that pressure away and bounce himself to the fence, keep his balance, and then as soon as he was against the fence, he switched into his next stage of takedown offense. And it happened very quickly. I mean, let's watch. There's the elbow, bounce, bounce, bounce. Now he's against the fence, straight to the elbow, lifts up, and clinch break. That's the kind of takedown offense that's discouraging, especially when you know you're stepping right back into Darren's world. And here it is one more time. Look, even quicker the next time around, because now Whittaker's not going to keep a hold of it. That's where Darren Till's feints come into play. This is something else that people don't really fully grasp about feints. Of course, they're useful to try and smoke your opponent's counters out. You can flinch and, get them to throw what they were going to throw if you were actually stepping forward. But, if they're going to level change, then it's going to give you that same read, that same opportunity. Darren's going to bounce heavy on his lead leg here. Bang. And you're going to see Whittaker level change. But Till's already moving out because he wasn't committing to his attack. He was posturing the attack. Watch the posture change of Whittaker. He covers because he's expecting an attack and then level changes. But Till's already moving away. I mean, that's a decent shot from Whittaker. He still gets deep, but Till's able to push him away. Like I said, really good takedown defense and a confidence booster for Till every time it happens. Great takedown defense here against Gastelum as well. And even on this really deep takedown defense that Gastelum gets here, Till overcommits, deep on the hips, but uses butterfly hook to get back to his feet. And then he's in striking range again. Okay, let's focus on the main finishing attributes of Darren Till. As we've discussed, he's got a background in Thai boxing, and you can see this style, but it's not a reckless Thai boxing style where he just walks himself into range kind of hard-nosed and, trades shot for shot. It's he tests range a lot more than most MMA fighters do. He's got a very educated understanding of how to play with the distance between him and his opponent. And then he's very left side dominant. Left hand, left elbow, left kick. All of the attacks off his left side are clearly in his head the more direct finishing techniques. But because he couples them together so nicely, and because he's so well managed in the way that he applies them, he can pick and choose the way that he lands them. Let's take a look at the variety now, because there is some real nice variety in this. I mean, poor old Yesenayari kind of went through the whole spectrum. He got a short right hand there that put him on wobbly legs, and then watch how Darren just kind of gradually cuts him down. You've got to think he's a young man that's got someone hurt there, and he's early in his UFC career. He's really measured. He's not overcommitting. He doesn't leave himself open unnecessarily, and he uses his feet to put himself in place so he can land with power. And again, it's the heavy bounce on the lead leg, but with control. This wide stance allows him to move himself in and out of range at speed without overcommitting. He's even when he's moving forward at pace, like Derek Brunson does, he's still got way more control. And even there, moving back, look at that little jog back. That's a very educated footwork here. He sees Yesenayari's back foot load. He can see he's now in a sprinting position. So Darren's going to adjust his front foot and push off that to an angle so he's just out of reach of that shot. parries it away with his left hand, and fires his left hand over the top. Again, using the momentum of his opponent against them. Stings him on the side of the head with the left hand, and then chases him down for a second shot. Loads of really good variety in Darren Till's game, and just as accurate on the floor as well. It's worth mentioning. Nice short left hand to the chin there, and again, there's the jog back sting to the temple. These are the things that Brunson's got to be careful of when when he is rushing forward, and when he's backed up against the fence. Now Darren's maybe defended a couple of his takedowns, and now Darren's starting to pick his shots a little bit more. Again, he's not overcommitting like he doesn't with his footwork. He doesn't overcommit with his punches. He decides when he's going to throw the power shot. He's going to decide when he throws the shot that's going to finish the fight. And this is by far one of my favorite finishes of his entire career. So this is against Bojan Veličković. I've talked a lot about feints already, but this is another prime example of how to utilize a feint to not only keep yourself safe, but also to set your opponent up for one of your power shots. And again, measured with his power shots. He decides when he's going to apply them. So he's got Bojan Veličković backed up against the fence here. And Veličković calls him on. So Till jogs himself into range, but instead of firing in recklessly with his left hand, he tempts the space between them. Little bounce forward. And what he sees is this right hook of Veličković swing out as if it's going to be a right hook counter. So Darren's now got this read. He's seen this shot. He's adjusted himself. He's out of range. He knows he's safe, but he's also seen this attack. As he steps forward through for his next attack, now he's adjusted it, because even so, if he stepped in with his left hand, if he stepped in to fire a left hand right to the chin of Veličković, there's still a risk of that right hook coming over the top and catching him on the side of the head. It's still not a... He wants it to be an unfair trade. He wants to be able to step in and land his shot without his opponent being able to land on him at all. And this is how he works around it. It's a beautiful finish. So he's tempted the left hand. Veličković has called him on. He's tempted with the left hand. Veličković has shown his right hook counter. So Till steps out, and then he's going to bounce straight back in, but this time he's coming way into range. And you can see Veličković is still swinging that right hook. But this time Darren Till's closed into elbow range, and he lands an elbow so cleanly and so closely that Veličković still is able to throw his right hook. It just goes all the way around the back of Darren. Let's just watch it in full speed, because it's such a measured application of a single knockdown shot that he had to set it up with something. But because he uses nothing obvious to set it up aside from the feint, it's easy to miss these things. Watch the feint. Tempt, elbow. I mean, the fraction of time between the two is really minimal. And he steps straight in with that power elbow over the top, lands on the temple. And I don't know how Veličković managed to stay conscious, because that cracked. I heard it through the fence. Against Dalby as well, we saw loads of variety. He was working the body really well, and then he tempted the body kick there. You can see he jogs in and kind of shows his back leg as if he's going to bounce off it to kick this target here, and then steps right in, cracks him with an elbow. Knee, moves off. He does the same thing here with another elbow. I mean, there's such a flair to his game. You can see how confident he is. And this, again, a perfect shot for someone that may be level changing. This sharp uppercut through the guard, which we're going to see in this next angle here, catches Dalby right on the chin as he's moving forward. Because you've got to bear in mind, Dalby has now been expecting that elbow to the top of the head, which he's been guarding. So Darren creates another channel for himself right through the underside of the guard and catches him clean on the chin. There's a real risk for Brunson if he's going to come crashing forward against Darren Till. He's much safer to walk his way into range behind his own shots and then level change. I mean, maybe rush himself into range so he spends less time in Darren Till's striking range as possible. Ultimately, if this fight's going to be won by Brunson, the easiest route to it is to take Darren down, put him on his back and beat him up. Because if he stands at range with Darren, he's going to be playing these games that I don't think he's quite on the level of comprehending. Give him another 18 months, 2 years with Henry Hooft, and I think he'll start to comprehend some of the games that Darren Till plays. but it's a very elevated level of striking, and he's experienced something similar with Adesanya. I mean, maybe that was a look behind the curtain of high level striking, but it would still take a lot to develop him to that stage. And, you know, even in his more recent fights, you know, even against Shabazian, we saw him come crashing forward. Against Holland, you know, although his striking looked a bit more comfortable, he's not against someone of the striking level of Darren Till or Adesanya. Chaotic, yes, but not measured, not setting traps and constantly giving you that feeling of anxiety, like something's coming and you don't know what it is. And that's what Darren's going to do from the offset. So a panicked Brunson shooting for a takedown is absolutely not a good idea. But a confident Brunson that knows that that's the best route to victory, that's a dangerous individual. Because Darren is an aggressive fighter. He does want to come in and get a knockout finish, and he will expose himself at times, and he will jog himself onto a single leg. These are the opportunities where Brunson can close that distance and not have to worry about dealing with those striking games. So just to finish this, let's focus on what Brunson does best. Because when I first started researching for this show, like I was excited to watch Darren Till. I like his striking style, and I always see new things in his game. But my everlasting memory of Derek Brunson was sitting octagon side when he fought Whittaker, and the whole time I'm just thinking, when is he going to run onto this knockout punch? Because I gave Whittaker that level of striking understanding where he would be able to set that up, and he did. He was able to. I expect the same thing from Darren Till here, but then as I've watched more of the details of Brunson's wrestling and grappling game, now I've started to think to myself, this could be a real problem for Darren Till if he's able to get his hands on him. Because Brunson's control on the floor, the way that he distributes his base and he spreads his balance, and the way that he uses his feet as well, it's quite clever how he breaks the opponents down. We saw it a little bit with Leon Edwards using that double hook, double bind on the leg. But the one always comes to mind is BJ Penn. He was so good at controlling people with his legs, almost as if they had a separate brain and they were doing their own thing. Let's just focus particularly on this Shabazian fight, because Brunson had exactly the right game plan in this fight for someone like Darren Till. He's not going to get every takedown. He's going to have to fight hard for some of them. But if he can crash forward behind punches and get his hands on his opponent and put them on the floor, he puts them into that cycle where they start to turn away from him to scramble. They get their wrist controlled and their back taken. Like, look at that wrist control there that he uses. As soon as Shabazian moves and places, you can see the hand of Brunson follows him and controls the wrist. And then he feeds it to the other side so he can start hitting. I mean, Shabazian does a good job of defending to an extent, but still, Brunson has got him in this cycle where he's able to wear him out. Lovely little foot sweep here as well. Just kicks his leg away. Because you can see... So, at this point here, Shabazian's leaning his weight into Brunson a bit. He's leaning into the fence post, of course, but some of his weight is leaning into Brunson. So Brunson's going to use this foot here, this near side foot, and just kick this base away, just to remove that stability. And as he does it, he's going to pull on his body as well. You can see he's also got the wrist control here. He's going to kick that foot away. He's going to kick the foot away, break him down, and then he's in control with wrist control, and he goes straight into hammer fists. And it's an exhaustive game. You know, again, Shabazian turns and gives his back. Watch the control of the legs. The right side hook's going to go in. Right side hook's in. Now the left side's come into play as well. This is what I was talking about with his legs. So right side hook goes in on the far side. You can see that hook's in there. But watch what the left leg does at the same time. The left leg's going to come and hook under the ankle of Shabazian here, and it's going to control this leg, because you've also got to think, Brunson's driving in with his leg here. He's pinching with his leg, so he's got some control over both sides of the body of Shabazian. Keeps a hook on that leg, and he's able to pressure and roll him over and pulls him over with the hook on the right side. Look, you can see this here. Really educated control from Brunson, who then takes top position and continues punishing Shabazian. And that was a lovely elbow over the top. And I mean, this is the first of two stoppages of this fight. You'll see the first one here, and then he actually comes out in the second round as well. And it couldn't be a more succinct finish, to be honest, in the second round. I mean, I don't think it was necessary for him to come out in the first place. But when he does, Brunson gives him no time to breathe. He goes power left hand, backs him up to the fence with a rush, takes his back, kicks the leg away, and then he's straight on his back as well. Straight away with this control. Look how he's hooking under that back ankle there. I mean, it's really lovely control. But at this point, Shabazian has really got nothing left to give. And he gives his hook, and then referee waves it off. I mean, if we're thinking about the best attribute of Derek Brunson, it's being able to control someone with his lower body while he beats them up with his hands. That's valuable in MMA in lots of different positions, especially if you're able to ground someone that would much rather be on their feet. So if we wrap this up in a summary, we've got Derek Brunson, who's got this chaotic rush, but the power in the left hand to back it up, and he throws it enough times and he throws it accurately enough at the target that something usually gets through, and he's had a lot of first round finishes because of it. Darren's a far more educated striker in the way that he applies his technique, but he's still just as dangerous. The difference is Darren doesn't overexpose himself too much when he's attacking. He bounds and he tests and he feints and he picks his shots. Brunson's got the wrestling though to back it up, and that's the deficit in Darren's game. He's got great takedown offense at 82%, but Derek Brunson's hustle in the wrestling is really problematic over the distance. 25-minute fight as well, you have to bear in mind. So Derek Brunson's going to get his hands on Darren, and he's going to try and get into the floor as quickly as possible. And I think from that position, it's a case of trying to keep him in that cycle for as long as possible until Darren gets tired. I expect Darren to be able to get back to his feet. I think he's going to be able to defend some takedowns. But if the fight lasts long enough, Brunson will be able to ground it at some point. And I think that's where Darren starts becoming exposed, because Brunson starts searching for the back. Now, Darren's got good takedown offense. It's much safer to defend these first 3 or 4 takedowns and just break the confidence of Brunson's wrestling. Discourage him from shooting anymore, and then he can start focusing on his striking game. His left side attacks, of course, are his main weapons, but there's variety to them, and he couples them together. He'll show the left hand and kick. He'll show the kick and fire the left hand. He'll show the left hand and then step in with a crashing elbow. It's a very, very measured approach that Darren has in the striking range. But then again, if it hits the floor, Derek Brunson can be all over him with striking whilst at the same time controlling with his lower body, whether that's mount or back. And there's one other thing to think about. When someone gets tired and they turn their back, that rear naked choke is there. And Brunson may only have one on his record, but he may be trying to add a second with Darren Till. This is an excellent fight. I'm really excited for it. Make sure you check it out. I'll see you next time.